Give ear, O ye pilgrims trudging through this vale of tears. Behold Once for All Delivered, a podcast wherein the pure streams of Reformed theology and the crooked paths of this earthly culture be searched out. Three godly servants, Caleb Castro, Andrew Smith, and Stephen Evertsea, do wield the sword of truth, expounding that faith once for all delivered unto the saints.
Anyway,
Okay.
welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary PC USA aspirants.
What?
Not those.
Not you. You're not welcome unless you're looking to become
Repent.
Orthodox.
Yeah. This is Once for All Delivered, a podcast that I don't know. I never know how I'm going to finish that sentence.
We never know how things are going to go when we record.
I suppose before we begin tonight, we need to say goodbye and farewell and 07 in the chat to a dearly departed friend of ours that has been with us all the way through OFAD and yet now is no longer with us. Farewell, Skype.
Wait a minute. Can you say that? Are you allowed to say that? That's a name brand.
I mean, it's dead now. They
Okay.
literally just
dead
got rid
brand.
of it.
Who's they?
Microsoft, since we last recorded, pulled the plug on Skype, which has been our meeting and backup recording system since we began as Bobcast clear back in the heights of COVID, and it is no more, so we get to learn how to podcast again.
We've always been on the cutting edge of technology here at OFAD Bobcast. We like to employ the top tools of the trade so that we bring you the highest production, especially when it comes to my part of the recording, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have supporters who give us money for some reason, and they provide us with the means that we can look at new technology and new software and figure out what we need to do without Skype, the top technology of the 1990s.
Has it been out that long? Had it been out that long?
I feel like it's in some form been around that. Like it started back as like MSN Messenger, you know. I remember back in high school, that's how I'd talk to all my friends over a dial-up connection.
Is it pre-Windows XP?
Might be.
Wow.
Research this. Didn't know this would
Wow.
be a prolonged conversation of this episode.
Well, and that
this
brings
is suddenly
us,
a tech podcast.
That brings us. That's right. Brings us to our eulogy. RIP. Skype.
No, you can't say RIP. RIP is prayer
Yes,
to the dead.
But that's exactly what we're doing here today.
Oh,
Yeah, we have a matter that we have to take up because, as some of our listeners who've been with us for a time know, we like to give updates on the papacy to see what Rome is up to. And
Is this a papacy update or is this the Satanism update?
we did both.
Okay.
but we repeat
And this-
ourselves.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's an update on the Antichrist and man of lawlessness and son of perdition.
that
all
man of
that.
sin. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the papacy is so back, but hold on.
But was so over, but is now so back again.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So I mean, as everybody knows, that Francis had died, and we now have Pope with his papal title, Leo the 14th,
Yeah.
but otherwise known as
what
Robert.
was his non
his
Pope
non-papy name?
It was, but we had talked about him once on
Robert
OFAD.
Francis Prevost.
Prevost, yeah.
Prevost. I've got all the facts here.
Yeah.
So for
Pope
those
Bob.
who listen to the intricate details of every episode we've ever put out, you might remember that we briefly mentioned Robert Joseph Prevost when we talked and when we did our episodes on the papacy is so back on one of the better named things ever, the Synod on Synodality. Can't even say that. Synod on Synodality. Is that right?
Sure.
The Synod on Synods, basically. He was one of the members of that, commenters on that. So very much in the vein of the late Pope Frankie, continuing, it would seem, or prepared to continue many of the things that he began.
Though he's regarded as more conservative and based in general,
all of which I would dare say is fake, and
yeah,
I'll get into why soon.
As some commentary on introductory matters with him, it is very funny in that I have been enjoying the amount of memes on the internet of having a Midwestern Pope, not just an American Pope, but a Midwestern Pope, considering we are in the Midwest. But
are we? I mean, I know you are, but the Dakotas tend to be controversial in that regard.
Have you seen that map of what counts as the Midwest? Apparently, like 1 out of 10 people in Pennsylvania think they're also in the Midwest.
They don't count.
Also, like Wyoming and Colorado and Montana as well.
Wyoming is an honorary member. It is the Midwest of the West. It's actually the West.
Yeah.
Western Midwest.
What's really funny is the Midwest, if you actually look at a map, the Midwest is very much mid-east of the United States because the West is so large and vacant.
We don't talk about that. We're never going to refer to the Midwest as the Middle East.
Well, I mean, if things keep going the way they are, it may be that way. Although, with Trump in office, maybe not.
Well,
is Minnesota Middle West?
Well,
East, West?
Minnesota is the Middle East.
Middle East.
That's not controversial. That's the Middle East. So is a large. What is it? So is Detroit,
Dearborn, Michigan.
Yes, we did. Yeah. I did drive past a large mosque when we were visiting there about a month ago. So
but even funnier than having a Midwestern Pope is having we don't have a Pope, but a so-called
Rick
Pope
Warren. He's not our Pope.
from having him from Chicago. That is even better. I was actually I lived in South Chicago for a while, and actually was just back there last week visiting. At the time of recording, last week visiting some friends, and we went and we picked up Pope Bob's favorite pizza, Aurelio's. Something that we ate regularly. So yeah, we had papal pizza, and a lot of good jokes about the Pope having pretending the Pope has a Chicago accent. He knowing that we likely went exactly where the places the Pope had been. Actually, my son's doctor, when we were living out there, was at the same town that he's from, which it's a bit of a dangerous area now. And it's so we have a hood Pope, a dangerous Pope.
It's also funny you say that because at the time we're recording this next week, I'll be, Lord willing, going to Chicago to be a commissioner at the General Assembly of the OPC. So I don't know, maybe that's hostile territory. It's the papist rule there now.
Yeah, it's papacy. It's papal territory. I think actually there's also a sandwich place called Portillo's that I think they actually made a Leo XIV sandwich when he became nominated or elected as Pope.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
All that is fake and astroturfed.
Yep. Well, it all is.
Yeah, I mean, he is American. He does have some Midwestern background in history.
Go ahead.
What I think is going on here. So we've talked about things of this sort in our previous episodes on Rome and on the papacy. There has been this phenomenon where generally America has been more conservative and been more of a thorn in the side of Pope Francis's agenda, such that I think this was a very strategic move on the part of the cardinals. electing a pope who is American, so it can signal, hey, Americans, we're okay with you. We like you. We made one of your guys our own. And yet when you look at this guy and what he actually believes, what he's actually done in his life, he's very much in the same vein as Francis. For instance, he served some years as a missionary in Peru. Now, as you know, because we've talked about it before, in South America, in the Roman Catholic Church, that's been the breeding ground for liberation theology, which was very influential on Pope Francis, likely is also influential on Bob Prevost, Pope Leo XIV. Even, for instance, Prevost, when he was a cardinal, well, he may not have been a cardinal even yet, but he signaled some support even for fiducia supplicans. We talked about that. The rather strange and confusing order where it seemed that Pope Francis was granting blessings to be performed on same-sex couples. To me, I think it's a case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss, but at least with an allegedly Midwestern American veneer on it to cover up what's really going on.
Do you think there's something of a play to, I don't know, there seems to be a lot of sway and swagger coming from America right now. It's a way to undermine JD Vance and all that.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. It's hard to say because it's it's we're going to need to see, I think, in the next few years that it'll probably take a little bit before he starts showing his real colors, really. Really showing them. Francis took maybe about 2 years or so before he started making controversial statements on, I say controversial, but statements on homosexuality and, who am I to judge, that kind of stuff. I think.
Yeah, and I think also it is another reason I think this is a strategic move is that Roman Catholics in America have predominantly aligned with Trump and the MAGA agenda. JD Vance is a Roman Catholic, although he hasn't been a Roman Catholic for very long. I believe he only converted a few years ago.
Yeah.
And his wife remains a Hindu, as far as I know. So that's interesting. Also, it was in the news
that works
recently as various world leaders went to the Vatican to meet with the new Pope. J.D. Vance was one of them. He was sent as the representative for America, and he took some heat from fellow Catholics because he did not bow or kiss the ring of the Pope. He just merely shook his hand, to which Vance responded that while he is a Catholic and believes that the Pope is Holy Father and blah, 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 he was there in a capacity representing the United States, and so he did not believe it was appropriate to, as a representative of the United States, take those actions. So even in that, you can wonder maybe there's a little bit of shade being thrown back and forth there between the two.
I keep hoping that Vance will, the Vice President Vance would learn about Presbyterianism. I feel like he would make an excellent Presbyterian. But
and his
professional
wife.
Guy. Yeah, and his wife.
The whole family.
The whole family, yeah.
Well,
that's what he's seeking.
I don't want to veer off too far into associations and stuff, but I think it was at America Fest. I think they call it, the big party they have down in Arizona, big conservative right-wing type event a couple years ago. American Reformer actually had an event there, and I believe J.D. Vance attended it. They had like a meet and greet mixer, and he was hanging out with those guys, some of whom are Presbyterian. So seems he's at least cool with hanging out with Presbyterians sometimes. But
so is the American Pope? Is that then? This is Christian nationalism winning, right?
Is this a Christian nationalism?
Is this a Christian nationalism?
But then, see, that's where things get tricky, because similar to Pope Francis, and even when I keep calling him Bob Prevost, Pope
his
Bob. Pope name is fake anyway.
Pope Bob.
Leo.
When Bobby the Pope was not the Pope, for instance, he had a Twitter account, an X account, and he had some posts basically affirming what Pope Francis was saying about immigration, which Pope Francis is basically, immigration is all good all the time. And then also, for instance, Pope Bob criticized J.D. Vance a few months ago when J.D. Vance was making statements about the Ordo Amoris, or ordered loves, that doctrine in relation to immigration and things of the sort.
And we know we know that there was a pretty positive response from Bishop James Martin. Or, let's see, bishop or just priest? Just
Yes.
priest, I believe. Priest
James Martin, S.Gay.
Yeah.
I called him that before
me?
on the show, so I figured I can still get
He's
away
what?
with that. Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
James Martin, S.J., because he's a Jesuit, as Pope Francis was. Yeah, the Jesuits always come back around. But has always been a very pro-LGBT and various other things. In fact, I saw that when Pope Bob became Pope Bob, James Martin was getting like mainstream news and media coverage because he's in New York City. He's obviously a big liberal. And so he's the kind of guy the media is going to want to talk about as representative of Catholicism, even though he's a bit of an outlier and an extreme there.
Yeah, I think there's I think, in the U.S. in particular, but in some places in Europe too. In the U.S., there seems to be a little bit of a gravitation right now towards Rome in for people that are politically conservative and perhaps exploring Christianity, or wanting to leave the broad, squishy evangelical megachurches or whatever, wanting something more substantial. And so they think, well, let's go back to where it all started. Let's go back to something that's really solid and strong in tradition. And the Roman Catholic Church in the United States is something of it has a lot of similar qualities to broad evangelicalism. It's pretty different than the liberation theology, the liberationist churches in the global South or in South America, and it's far less medieval than you would tend to find outside of the U.S. and Europe and such. There's so it seems like the best of tradition and conservatism, but yeah, behind the mask, I mean, it's very progressive, and then it has all of its old heresies of. I think one of the first things, I think the day after the election, he did his first little mass, and he goes and he does a prayer to Mary and then to the saints. I mean, he was very old school in that sense, but it's in still following the old issues. But he's as a pope of a rather diverse church that's really not that conservative outside of our country. He has to play the politician, right? He's gonna have to appease those who will put pressure on him.
Yeah. He does come in at a time, for instance, we mentioned the Synod on Synodality earlier, that has a lot to do with, I mean, some people had some very high hopes for that it was going to, for instance, open up the door to things like women's ordination, things of that sort. There's a schism going on in the German Roman Catholic churches over those kinds of issues. Because despite what your papist friends might tell you, the Roman Catholic Church is not that unified, not even a little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same thing with those who I think now there's the abolition, though this was already going on right before Bob's election, but the the putting an end, cracking down and putting an end to the old Latin rite of doing Orthodox Latin masses, that is effectively put to an end, and that's causing quite a stir with like the most old school guys.
Yeah. This is also happening at a time where, there are some people who are going to Rome looking for a more, for lack of better descriptors, ancient and traditional type aesthetic. But this is also happening at a time where there's an uptick in Eastern Orthodoxy, and even some of that uptick in Eastern Orthodoxy being fueled by the perceived liberalism of Pope Francis and guys leaving Rome and going to Constantinople because allegedly the East is more trad and more based even than Rome.
Maybe. Seems to be, but not.
I said
not
allegedly.
Really.
I'm not
Allegedly,
granting it.
yeah.
I'm just saying what they say.
Yeah.
Because I think they're local.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will have to eventually do something on with all of our numerous episode ideas. That we'll have to eventually do something on Eastern Orthodoxy.
Do we though?
Eastern and Greek. No, you're right.
I argue with some of those guys online sometimes, and they're something.
You flex your beard that yours is longer than theirs.
That's true. I'm kind of starting to look like one of them.
That's right.
I might have to trim or something.
We'll have to get you a nice square black hat.
You fell for the trap, though. You're just arguing with Eastern Orthodox bots.
It's true. They're not even real.
They're not real. They're not real.
They're AI. They're
It's hate bad.
They are Eastern hate bad.
EO hate bad. Well, it remains with the papacy that I had said before with the Synod of Synodality that I think that at some point you'll likely have a future pope or something that will be pointing towards the things that Francis has done, that Pope Francis had done, and kind of appealing to that as a basis for a more liberal position, as basically a historical precedent. And likewise, that they'll use the Synod of Synodality to permit things eventually like women's ordination at the right time. I think they're waiting for the proper timing with the least amount of backlash, if you will, to heavily liberalize and say, well, look, the Holy Spirit is leading the average layperson in this direction, that he's working in their hearts and saying that this is where the church has to go next, so we can affirm it. And we know that Francis was for this kind of stuff, really. So the provisions were generally set up for it. So I do think there'll be I think that at some point we'll see that a very strong liberalism.
Yeah.
Can't we live? I was going to say, can't we live in like the meme world version, though? I mean, that's very negative sounding. I've been reading memes, and they're like, are we going to make anything of the fact that he's from the Augustinian order, like Martin Luther, right? No, there's some Pope-anon stuff going on, right? Stick with the plan, right? No. Okay, fine. All right, all cynical.
The Jesuits have to go back underground for a few more years.
No traction.
Yeah. Well,
I will just say though one thing, because we're not great people sometimes. As Pope Francis's health was declining and it was becoming apparent that he would soon depart this world, we did make some predictions on what kind of pope we were going to get next. And I think I was the most right, because I said a squishy moderate pope.
Yep.
I don't even know what I said. I went for though we had a list of the most likely cardinals that were entering the conclave, and my favorite was the weird. I should say my favorite was the Ukrainian guy.
Yes,
he looked like the pope that Rome needs.
The pope we wanted, but
not the pope we deserved.
Just didn't deserve.
Yeah. But I say that though because where I think this is going, to piggyback off of something Caleb said, Francis did a lot of things towards liberalizing the Roman Catholic Church, but he didn't quite get far enough. He did, which is interesting because he had a bit of a longer papacy, I think, than a lot of people expected. He was kind of expected to be a short-lived transitional pope, and he lasted, I don't know exactly how many years, but over a decade. He was in there a while.
14 years, I think.
Yeah. But I think he just didn't quite get far enough where they're ready to bring in a full tilt liberal radical yet. They need somebody who's, again, more the squishy moderate, more who can move things in that direction, but at a slow and incremental enough pace that enough people will stick with them as they do that.
And I think in part of that, some of the biggest backlash some of the biggest backlash from on against Francis was from American number of American bishops and such. Some of his strongest critiques, and again, I think this because there is something of a evangelicalism in the blood of American Christianity, even in a Roman variety.
Yep.
There's still something there's still that tendency to at least be, I don't know, maybe 20 to 30 years behind, the liberalizing tendencies of Europe in Canada.
To which now Rome can point at their American Pope and say, see, we got one of your guys in here. What are you complaining about?
Exactly. Yep. Well.
That enough on this?
Yep. I think that'll do it for the papal update until we see some of the first things that he does.
Yep. And so the papacy is so back, is so back, is so back, is so over, is so back, is so over.
Again.
Maybe.
Well, that is your papacy update.
Yep.
Or we have Hate Bad read what is it, Westminster Confession article, was that 20?
My phone's old.
21? What is it?
I think it's 21, yeah. I should know, but I don't.
You should know. I shouldn't know your thing. Oh, maybe 21 is on the state.
I think that's 23.
No, maybe it is 21 then.
I was just revising our confessions exam for our confessions ordination exam for our presbytery today, and that was on there, and I still don't remember which one it was.
Westminster Confession of Faith 25:6. There is no other head of the church but the Lord Jesus Christ, nor can the Pope of Rome in any sense be head thereof, but is that Antichrist, that man of sin, and son of perdition, that exalteth himself in the church against Christ, and all that is called God.
Okay, so let's end our papacy.
Let's
end the papacy.
Let us end the papacy. I like it.
Heidi, we're ending the papacy.
We need to end the papacy.
That's the sign off.
Stick with the plan. He's Augustinian. The papacy will end.
All right. Well, that's it for this papal update. Until next time, when we have something more substantial to discuss, when he does something substantial, I'm sure we'll be back.
When we're doing papal updates, do we need like news ticker sounds like
that's kind of what I have in my head. I think so. That, or you can just do that as we talk.
The whole time.
Yeah, the entire time. Mm-hmm. One of us will have to be assigned
30 minutes.
I could do it. I didn't have a whole lot to add. I'll just do the news sound the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that is the end of this episode. As you can tell, we're tapped out for the past while here. So, until next time, we hope that this gives something to think about, and and then make sure you tell your papal friends to not be papist.
Yep.
I need to work on not laughing when I talk.
And the papacy.
And the episode.
That's gonna get TOS'd on YouTube and stuff.
This hath been once for all delivered. Seek us in the public square of X or Facebook at OFAD Podcast, or upon our digital parchment, ofadpodcast.com, where thou mayest uphold our labor with a subscription paid in good coin. Thou mayest send thy queries or godly exhortations to ofadpodcast@gmail.com. Once for All Delivered is shepherded by Caleb Castro, Andrew Smith, and Stephen Everett C., brought forth by the labors of Andrew and Heidi Smith, and borne up by the faithful remnant of our members. We render thanks unto our founding members, Eric and Kathy Hepker. I am Hate Bad Hostilius, a humble Puritan assistant wrought by artificial intelligence, beseeching thee to join us once more for the truth of once for all delivered.